You're listening to Spark TV, where we bring you daily interviews with real women in business at all stages. I'm your host, Danielle Lewis, and I am so grateful to have you here.
I was starting to realize over the last decade of my life just how often I got stuck in these kind of expectations. I wasn't sure whose they were or where they come from or why I was still heeding them, but this idea that I needed to be performing perfectly, from the way I looked to the way I worked to the way I loved to the way I live, that it was my job to keep everybody happy no matter what the cost was to me a lot of the time, and that I should be protecting others by biting my tongue, not rocking the boat, not making people uncomfortable. And so for a long time I thought, oh, this is just a me thing, surely. Nobody else is kind of this messed up and tangled in knots. But the researcher in me was curious. And so I was like, well, is this just a me thing, or actually are other women struggling with this perhaps as well? And is there anything, again, my other part I love is, where's the evidence-based practical tools and things we can do in our very busy lives if this is not working for us? And so we went out and we first gathered a group of about 150 women, all different ages, and we asked them, well, what does being a good girl mean to you? Does this show up in your life? Where did it start? Does it help you? Does it not help you? And we definitely saw it wasn't just me in that. And then recently we've just validated those findings with a study of more than 1,000 women across Australia. And what I think, Danielle, was so interesting in that research, because again, I'm 51, 52, somewhere in there. And I thought maybe it was my generation. I'm a Gen Xer. We grew up still, very nurtured on fairy tales and certain beliefs and ideas. It's only just before I was born that a woman could get her own bank account without a dad or husband signing for it. So it's like, maybe it's just our generation. But what we saw was actually 77% of women aged 18 to 35 still believe that they need to conform to these good girl ideas.
Yeah, it's just wild. And I mean, I see it showing up so much in the Spark community from so many different facets, whether it be women who are working from home, but they still feel compelled to take on all of the home duties, like the cooking and the cleaning and the raising of the children. But even, how we show up on social media and market our businesses, there's this not wanting to offend anyone, not wanting to have too strong an opinion, which is just absolutely wild. It's interesting that you, talked about the generational difference, because I guess we look to others for examples, don't we? And if all we're seeing is the example of, well, that's the benchmark of perfection and good girl, of course it gets ingrained in us that that's what we think that we're supposed to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And we saw this in our research when we talked to women who had felt like, yeah, kind of grew up with some of that, but I threw that off. Like, I broke free of that. Now they used to say, I am uniquely me, or, you be uniquely you, I'll be uniquely me. So just whoever the heck we are and what that looks like for us. The women that had broken through those good girl, we talk about as good girl grooming, because in many ways we are groomed to think that this is how we earn love and this is what keeps us safe, without quite calculating the long-term cost for those behaviors that we found with many of the women. We can talk about that as well if it's useful. But what happened for the women who broke free, exactly to your point, they had role modeling and mentors of other women who were going, you can all think that. In fact, what we saw was it was this kind of set of societal expectations that many of us pick up between the ages of 11 and 14. And then we continue right throughout our lives into our 50s, as I did, before we start going, hang on a second, on whose terms and for whose benefit here am I living my wild and precious life?
Yeah, and it's really interesting because I think sometimes it is actually just us in our heads. I remember having this conversation with my husband when I was, about burnt out from cooking the nightly dinner.
Yeah.
And I just went, I feel like because I don't earn as much as you, that I need to carry the weight of some of these extra jobs. And he's like, what the heck? He's like, when did we have that conversation? When was that ever an expectation? I was like, oh, I think I just thought it in my head. And so I've just put this pressure on myself.
And in the meantime, he's probably thinking, oh, you like doing that. I'm helping you out by letting you do that. And there's
She's so
definitely a ton
organized.
of that,
She's
right? Yeah,
incredible, you know? Yeah, it's
definitely.
just
Yeah.
insane. Well, I don't know
Yeah.
why we do it. I don't know why we do it.
Yeah, well,
But
and
talk.
so what we found is why we do it, just to that for a second, because I think it's helpful for
Mm,
all of us to understand
mm,
this isn't serving us well and you want to break free of it, is that again, often we've learned from family, friends, people who had good intentions for us, that actually this was the way that you did stay safe, and other people would
mm,
appreciate you, and you would be valued at work and get promoted, and you would have clients that were happy with you. And to be fair, some of that is true, right? When we are in these good girl behaviors, often other people do find us more agreeable and
yeah.
supportive and all those things. The cost, though, that we found was that the longer we stay in it, and we see it for women, particularly around about the 30 to 35 age group, that the exhaustion, as you touched on, starts to
Mm,
just become unsustainable, not surprisingly, right? So we do this faulty maths. We think, you know what, if I keep everyone happy, then I'll be safe and loved. But we don't calculate the long-term cost that says, well, not only am I likely to be exhausted, we found in the research with the women, are like, I feel like I've lost my sense of identity, like who I
mm,
am. And I know for me, starting my business was a big space after having 2 kids to go, I just need somewhere that I get to be me and not who
yeah.
everybody else thinks I am. But the other one is resentment too, a feeling perhaps like you were in that situation with your
Yes,
husband.
that's
You
the
go, I'm
word.
sick of cooking the dinner every night. Can nobody help me here? And
Yes.
then to hear, I'm happy to help if you just ask. And again, I
Yeah.
think we get this, oh, I have to bite my tongue and not complain about it because it's part of
Mm.
this good girl grooming we learned so early.
That wraps another episode of Spark TV. Shout out to Spark TV sponsor IP Australia for their amazing support of the Spark podcast and women in business. And if no one tells you today, you've got this.